Hello, Australia, and welcome to the BAP. It's the 11th of the 6th, 2017. My name is Franco, and joining me, as per usual, is Jason. However, not joining us today, unfortunately, will be Dean. So you'll be left without Dean today, but nonetheless, we shall be able to cover for our good friend Dean on the news and events that have transpired over the last 2 weeks. In recent news, the BAP has a new bubble, so to speak. So, Jason, how are you feeling about the new bubble?
I like the new bubble. It's much more comfortable than the old bubble.
Yeah, and it's starting to get a little bit of atmosphere that we've never really had.
And most of the atmosphere comes from that chair that you're sitting on, the throne, the BAP throne.
I decided that worthy of my stature would be a red leather captain's chair to sort of guide the good ship BAP through turbulent waters in the world of politics and such.
BAP, engage.
So, Jason.
It's been a big week.
But before we launch into what has actually happened this week, Douchebag Filterage, what have you got?
Well, okay. The only thing I've got at the moment is something most people are giving up on these days is Fear the Walking Dead is the TV series, which is, I don't mind it. It's come back. It's I watched the most recent 2 episodes just yesterday, and I'm already pissed off with it.
So, what?
Fear the Walking Dead is a spin-off from the original Walking Dead series.
No, I recall. So, hold on. I was a bit distracted trying to figure out if we were actually going live to air, and I can assure myself and Jason and to those people who aren't listening right at this moment that we are indeed live.
The multitudes that are listening.
So,
right
hold
now.
on. You're watching season 2?
It's season 3, actually.
Okay, this shows you how far behind, because I did complete season 1, which it's interesting. It's not quite, The Walking Dead same. There is a bit of a difference because they're at a different stage of the virus contagion. I did get into season 1 and I did watch it. I think, if I remember correctly, I purchased it. So
right.
I didn't immediately have access to season 2, and I wasn't inclined to go out of my way to find it.
I like it, but they've immediately done something, and this is a slight spoiler, and I won't say who it is or what it is, but because you can assume someone's going to die every episode.
Yeah.
But basically, there's a major character that they die off in a totally... they had a big episode where this person was laying carnage. He was killing zombies all left and right, walkers left and right.
He knew how to deal with walkers, is basically what you're telling me. He's not going to walk into a room blindly and open a random cupboard and go, oh my God, there's a walker in there. He's
fended off some white supremacists that they found at the border of Mexico, and he's dealt with them. They've escaped that. They made a deal, and they're going to a place of safety, and they're all evacuating a place that's being overrun by the walkers, as happens fairly frequently. And he gets in a helicopter, and you think, well, helicopter's fairly safe in this kind of world at the moment, so they're flying off in a helicopter to their place of safety, and for no apparent reason, suddenly the helicopter comes under fire. Just bullets start spraying into it. He gets killed, and this is a major character just killed, and there's no explanation as to who or why. Even in the next episode, there's no explanation.
But just move on.
Just move on. He's done. And I'm going. That struck me as someone who was coming to the end of his contract. And
that's what I'm immediately thinking. If they really have to remove someone very quickly, and they don't want to go for the cheap option of, cheap walker death, it's like.
But it wasn't even like a big meaningful death or anything like that. Like, you tend to give someone a little bit of that, but.
Well, I think that's a bit of a signature move of The Walking Dead. I remember there's that. I can't remember, one of the more recent series of The Walking Dead where they made a big hoopla of one of the side characters and they just got shot cheaply along the railway tracks.
Yeah, that's right. They did too.
So it's not a first for the series, but I understand your frustration. Don't make a big whole episode about a side character that then kill them.
Yeah.
I don't want to invest.
He'd been in it. Oh, sorry, I've given away his gender there. That might narrow it down a little bit. But he'd been in it from the beginning, and it was. I thought they would have made a little bit more of it, but perhaps they'll come back to why the helicopter came under fire, but maybe not. Not necessarily.
Now, I'm gonna walk into dangerous spoiler territory. So if you're very invested in Fear the Walking Dead, maybe just
given the size of our listenership and the size of the Fear the Walking Dead viewership, probably not anyone.
There's no intersect between those. I'm wondering, does this individual have a dubious past of being involved in a Latin American?
No.
Okay, then I don't know who it is.
Yep. No, that's not the one.
So, okay.
You do know that character, but
I probably
that's
do.
not the one. Anyway, so that happened. Other than that, I don't know where this series is going as yet. It was just that was one little pet peeve that came up immediately.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I haven't really watched much else. Haven't seen much else this week, actually. I don't think that's about it.
Well, since I've moved into a new residence, I've been without proper internets. I've had to rely on my mobile phone data, and therefore I considered that a no-go zone for Netflix. So I've been Netflixless for most of the week, so I haven't been able to watch much.
You've been dealing with commercial TV.
Yes, so I don't want to talk about that.
Actually, it's a bit of an experience when you haven't been dealing with commercial TV for a while, and then suddenly you're exposed to it.
Yes.
I know it was a learning experience for me.
Being forced to watch commercials is quite a interesting experience.
Just being forced to watch the content they have on there as well is a bit of an experience.
Pretty.
When you're dealing with what's being served up to you rather than what you decide to pull down, it's an entirely different experience.
However, I did regain access to proper internets, and I watched a couple of movies. I don't know if I mentioned this though, actually. Did I mention that No, I don't think I mentioned this show. I got convinced to try an episode of the American version of House of Cards. I watched the first episode.
Yeah, I've seen the first season and probably a half after that as well. I don't know. Apparently it got a little bit better after season 2. I like season 1. I thought that was good.
Yeah.
Then season 2 just went off the rails for me.
Okay.
But it definitely the season 1 was good.
Yeah, well, I'll be
Kevin
continuing to watch.
Spacey's fantastic. Yeah.
Well, I mean, he's a class act when it comes to acting. I found it a bit annoying that they went with a good-looking bimbo to be the little go-get-em journalist. It's like, really, do we have to go down this path? Is that the reality?
It's commercial TV.
Yeah. But yeah, it was an enjoyable episode. Kevin Spacey's character and his wife are cold, hard dudes, aren't they?
Yeah. They're political realists.
You know,
supposedly a Democrat. Yeah. I mean, well, actually, no, not supposedly. He is a Democrat.
I thought he was a Republican. I didn't pay too much attention.
No. He's a Democrat, but they're part of that realist wing of the Democratic Party, which is, they're very much neoliberalist and which is fairly realistic by today's standards, I guess. But things are changing.
It's funny. I didn't really take notice of which party they're representing. I just sort of...
well, that's because they're so similar. It doesn't really matter.
This is true. They're all assholes. So.
And Kevin Spacey is essentially a party whip. So he's the guy that goes around and rouses up the other politicians to make sure they're doing what they're meant to do. And they're usually doing stuff that isn't terribly much different to the to the Republican Party.
And obviously, from what transpires in the first episode, it seemingly suggests that he's going to go rogue.
Rogue, or he's just going to start defining the direction of the party itself.
Yeah. Well, and that direction is what suits Frank Underwood.
Exactly. No, he plays a good part, and I thought it was good, but I don't know, maybe as I got more cynical about politics and that, and you start watching this show, it's like I can't watch West Wing now.
Right.
Have you ever watched West Wing?
No, I've never tried.
Yeah, I don't think you can go back and watch it now that if you become a little bit woke as to politics. Going back and watching West Wing just looks so naive.
That's a very Yay America type show, isn't it?
It was Yay American. It was very much like the idea of so Martin Sheen plays the president, and he's very much such a nice guy, and he's always trying to do the right thing. But when you see it now with the context of real world politics around it, it just looks fairly pathetic. Really, it's like, what do you mean they do? I guess I've become a bit of a nihilist when it comes to that kind of stuff, and it's a bit hard to deal with.
Ding, 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 ding.
Exactly.
Whenever the word nihilist gets mentioned, I have to reach for my nihilist toothpaste. I really need to put a picture of that on the interweb somewhere so people know what we're talking about. I just brought this out of the blue. Speaking of which, I watched a few movies this weekend. I didn't really watch TV shows. I rewatched the first Avenger, Captain America, the first one.
I haven't seen any of those.
Yeah, well, I saw that one at the cinemas, and I don't recall being overly impressed. I watched it again. It's not too bad a movie.
I've heard, some of those movies aren't too bad, but I'm just kind of worn out with superhero movies these days. So much so, even though Wonder Woman's getting really good reviews, I don't know if I can be bothered seeing that one either. But
well, I'm definitely not going to the movies to see Wonder Woman, but I too have also heard good reviews of that one.
I'm just exhausted with superhero movies. There seem to be so. The last one I did see was Logan, which I don't think was really that much of a superhero movie. It was it was a bit different.
It was a very different. It was like, I mean, if you've ever seen The Wrestler, it was that sort of style for burnt out superheroes, and it was really well done. Very enjoyable.
I thought it was good.
I saw a trailer for Black Panther.
Yeah, I've heard a little bit about that, but I haven't seen too much in the way of trailers or anything like that.
Yeah, check out a trailer. It's worth watching. Okay. It's pretty decent from what I see. So yeah, I watched that. I also watched Batman vs Superman. It's a very tainted movie.
Yeah,
it was panned by the critics. It's a bit confusing because from what I experienced through the marketing, it seemed to me that it was being marketed as a Batman movie. And it's not really the case. It's not a Batman movie. But if you go into it thinking it's a Batman movie, you're going, this movie makes no sense. Because if you're trying to look at it through the prism of a Batman movie, it seems disjointed. You have to really reset your brain to think, this is a Super Friends movie. And then it starts making a bit more sense.
But it's bad Super Friends, right? Evil Super Friends slightly.
That's how they marketed it, but once again, that's not meant to be.
I thought Superman. See, I haven't seen it, but I thought Superman took a dark turn or something like that.
Well, they sort of play on that. Well, am I divulge much if I start explaining the plot on this one?
Fair enough.
I don't know. I don't think we have enough people that listen that really care. But anyway, basically, it's more of a setup for sequels, this movie. So it's setting up the premise of how the metahumans team up to become super friends.
Okay. And on that note, I rewatched the old Mummy, the Brendan Fraser Mummy movie.
Oh, yeah. I always enjoyed those.
I love that movie. And mainly because I'd seen some reviews of the new Mummy movie and everyone panning that because it's essentially a reboot. It's Universal wanting to cash in on the superhero franchises, and they're marketing their own dark universe. And apparently the fault with this movie is that they don't know how to set the tone, and they launched into the first movie clearly saying we're going to have other movies, yet not being able to make a decent fist of the first one.
Yeah, well, I mean, the original Mummy wasn't, well, from what I watched, I never saw that and thinking, yeah, this is a vehicle for sequels. It was a standalone movie originally.
It became a vehicle for sequels.
It did, but the original was a standalone movie. Yeah. It didn't sort of end on a cliffhanger or mysterious suggestions that something needs to be resolved in subsequent movies. It was just a good solid standalone of the romancing the Stone Age. There was comic elements, romance, action.
Yeah, it was good. It was good quality.
I don't think Tom Cruise is bringing that to this reboot. No, there's no comedy when Tom Cruise is involved.
The reviews I've seen, they just said they don't know which tone to strike with the movie, and you got Tom Cruise doing his Tom Cruise role. He's playing a cocky asshole, and that kind of thing. But then you got Russell Crowe in there. As you find out later, Johnny Depp's already signed up as the Invisible Man for the next movie, and it's going to be there's a whole pantheon sort of that it's launching into. But there's almost certainly going to be a second movie, but whether the franchise kicks on properly or not, who knows? But anyway, that was enough inspiration for me because every review said go back and watch the original Mummy, and I went, yes, I will. And sure enough, I love that movie. I think it's pretty good.
It's good fun. They did a really good job. That sort of mix of comedy and action was really good. And I mean, we just don't see enough movies come out of that nature these days.
No, they take themselves a little bit too seriously. Or
the first Transformers tried that mix and it worked really well.
Actually, you're right. First Transformers was okay. Then every movie since has been pretty abysmal.
I think I've mentioned this on the show before. In my recent attempts to watch a recent Transformers movie, I can't even sit through more than 30 minutes of it before I go. They're just atrocious.
Not even with Mark Wahlberg?
I don't know why he wants to lend his name to it. It's such a horrible, horrible franchise now.
I think I can be certain why he wants to lend his name to it.
Right, he gets a big payday, of
big
course.
dollars in that, yeah.
You know what else I did rewatch, actually, because I ferreted out my hard drive that had lots of old movies on it, and I rewatched Star Trek, the reboot.
Oh, no, that was really good.
It is good. I've probably watched it about 10 times now. And
they've gone completely wayward with every movie since.
Yes, I did not enjoy the next one.
Reboot was, that's the one they could have screwed up so badly, and yet they did a really good job of it, but it was the sequels that they've really messed up.
I mean, it had just enough Jerry Bruckheimer stylings to make it exciting, but it sort of seemed a bit truer to the original.
They struck the tone right. Yeah. Chris Pine plays a fantastic Kirk.
Yes.
Spock and McCoy were well cast. it was really good. I was really surprised. I'm a bit of a Star Trek fanboy from way back.
Yes, I agree.
And but then the second movie, I didn't think it was bad as what a lot of people thought. But then the third movie is just terrible.
So I haven't seen the third one.
I'm not even sure I'd bother.
I couldn't get my head around the second one. It just it seemed too much actiony.
Yeah, I thought it was okay, but the third one was just it was terrible. It put me off watching probably another one after that, which is a bit of a shame. I think there was J.J. Abrams in that as well.
Oh, so J.J. Abrams. I said Jerry Bruckheimer.
Yeah.
I think you're right. It is an Abrams vehicle, but I mean, I find it hard to distinguish between those two individuals. But I'm excited about the Star Trek Discovery, I think it's called. That's coming to Netflix.
Oh, the new series, yeah.
And
that could be good, actually. It'd be worth checking out.
Although there's been a lot of MRA people getting their knickers in a knot over that, because not only does it have a female captain, it has a secondary female lead.
Oh my God.
And they're just losing their heads.
And they're both women of colour too.
Yes.
Oh my God.
They're freaking out. Where are the white people?
Where are the white men, specifically?
So I'm really looking forward to that. I've watched a few of the trailers, so I'm pretty excited.
Yeah, no, I'll definitely be giving that a look as well.
And yeah, well, that's really all I've got for douchebaggery.
That's probably enough for douchebag, I think.
So yeah, it's been a big 2 weeks. I have been following, well, because I've been moving house, I haven't really been keeping that up to date with most things. But I did hear a bit of the James Comey testimony. He testified this week to Senate hearings.
James, I cannot speak about that in an open setting, Comey.
Yeah, and pretty much that was my sentiment of that whole of the open hearings was what you haven't really said anything that we haven't already heard.
I think he basically what came across was he was willing to say it basically the subtext was yes, he lied and I can verify that, and Trump lied about many things and I can verify that, but that's about all. He wouldn't actually give any details, I think.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of what he was doing was for the nuance of people who had access to the information.
Perhaps.
And his little cues, his little specific words he used make sense if you're privy to the information he's talking about. For everyone else, it's like you haven't.
Perhaps we better fill in
Yes.
for people who don't know anything about it. James Comey was the FBI director.
Yes.
And he was the FBI director under 3 presidents. The original, Bush 2, Obama, and for a very brief moment under Trump.
Yes. Because they get a 10-year tenure.
10-year tenure, but he's ended prematurely.
Yes.
Although not too prematurely, because if he was under a Bush, it must have been.
Was he director under Bush too, or was he working?
I know you're right. He was working under.
Yes.
He was working.
I think
under Bush too.
he was appointed.
He was assistant attorney general, I think.
And he was about 5 years into his term.
So Comey was during the U.S. election. He was the FBI director that came out, was accused of affecting the election by colouring it with some testimony regarding Hillary Clinton.
Yeah. So basically, what he did was, up until about 3 months before the election, refusing to comment on any ongoing investigations. Then all of a sudden, he decided to announce that they had new information pertaining to the Hillary Clinton email server scandal.
And that's where they were reopening the investigation.
Yes, which cast quite a slant against the Hillary campaign. And the worst part was nothing came out of that investigation.
Yeah.
She was cleared, but not necessarily that was the particular thing that sunk the Hillary campaign, but it was a contributing factor, and it was a bizarre, comment by Comey, considering that he was very reluctant to comment on any investigation.
There's been essentially an unspoken rule that FBI will not make anything like a political. Will not try and colour a US election in any way. They won't try to intervene in any way.
Yeah, and they won't make comments about ongoing investigations that may pertain to a candidate.
And they will try to steer clear of doing anything that will affect the election overall. They will let the election play out and then probably do something.
It was so strange that right at the last moment when it would have the most effect, he would come out in this. And it's not to say that no one's suggesting that James Comey was advocating for Trump to become president. A lot of people, Sam Cedar suggested he was setting up the cover for if he went after Trump if Trump lost the election.
Yeah. I think, as Sam Cedar says, everyone was assuming Hillary was going to win.
Yes.
And he was also probably assuming Hillary was going to win. He was essentially clearing the decks.
Yes.
And making sure everything was above board at this point because no one really thought Trump was ever going to pull it out.
I bet he's regretting that decision now.
Absolutely. And then so after Trump was elected, he was then stuck in a hard place where he had a president where there was clearly an ongoing investigation into some members of the Trump campaign who may have been talking to Russians.
Well, yeah, the campaign and the transition team, yes.
And so this and specifically Michael Flynn, who was then named as Trump's NSA director. So this is kind of arcane stuff, but it basically when it came out that Michael Flynn had been talking to certain Russian officials, an ambassador, and then he'd also accepted money from Russia Today, the news organization, for a dinner over in Russia and a speech and stuff. Then Flynn had to be excused as the NSA, as the National Security Advisor.
That's a very diplomatic way of putting it.
And then, of course, as it turns out, Trump apparently asked Comey to stop the investigation into Michael Flynn, to back off from that.
Well, I mean, that's probably a stronger way to put it. What he actually says, could you find a way to drop it? Read into that what you will.
Yeah, that's right. And so now with all that going on, Trump's been trying to wash his hands of the situation and make sure he's as far away from this Michael Flynn situation as possible. And people want to know exactly how deeply involved Trump might be. And it turns out he may not personally be very involved himself at all. But over there's a lot of politics going on, particularly Hillary Clinton trying to offload any blame for the loss of the election onto anything other than herself. Yeah. And that includes making sure that everyone believes that Trump may have colluded with Russians. And so James Comey has, after being fired by Trump because he wouldn't back off of the investigation, has now come forward, and there was it was a big event in America. People watching it on TV, and
apparently bars in Washington DC opened early so people could watch it, and
which is crazy because the guy literally got up and said it pretty much all the time. Said I can't comment on that in an open setting.
It was a nothing burger, as Dean would say.
Yeah,
and I was specifically annoyed because basically what you had senators who were part of the Intelligence Committee, and also some senators who were part of some other committees who by default get to ask questions, pretty much creating a bizarre narrative. So they were asking James a question, knowing that he couldn't answer it, but creating a narrative through the question to create the story they want to be perceived by the public. And all James would say, can't really comment.
Well, so what you had was a whole bunch of politicians, each with 7 minutes to ask questions, and just filling that time with, as you said, narrative building garbage.
Yeah, and it was annoying because you're going, what is the point of this? I'm hearing senators waffle for questions which I know James is all he's going to say is can't answer this.
Leading questions where, as you said, they're setting up the narrative about. I'm trying to think of an example offhand, but I can't really. But basically, trying to ask a question in such a way that possibly offlays any Republican Party responsibility. And then hearing James Comey say no comment kind of thing.
The funniest thing though, out of most of it being really boring and standard political argy-bargy, was when the Arizona Senator, John McCain, came up and used his precious 7 minutes for what seemed like a moment of senility.
Yeah.
It was crazy. He tried to make some sort of weird comparison about how, on the one hand, the Hillary investigation was now complete, but the investigation into the Trump transition team was not complete. And why is that so? And his brain didn't seem to be able to understand that they were separate investigations happening at separate times, and therefore one could be complete and the other couldn't be complete. Yeah. And then at the same time, he tried to also ask why wasn't there an ongoing investigation into any collusion between the Democratic candidate and Russians.
The way he was asking was clearly...
It was very clumsy, very
silly as well.
Even James was confused.
And but it's not a totally obtuse question if he actually wanted to ask something, because the Clinton Foundation has received money from Russian oligarchs, and so there's legitimate lines of questioning that could have gone, but they weren't really interested in legitimate lines of question. They were, and specifically McCain probably wasn't capable of a legitimate line of question.
Well, you couldn't even structure the question correctly.
Yeah,
that was the
weird.
problem.
It was very odd.
I think he was having momentary lapses of reason as he was trying to assemble his argument.
Yeah, I think he's way too old to be in that role.
I think, he spent
I'm not being
7
ageist. He's just simply, he's past it.
he's 80 years old.
Yeah.
The thing was, he took 7 minutes to make no sense, and basically all he wanted to say is, why aren't you investigating any allegations of collusion between the Hillary campaign and Russians?
Yeah.
That's what he wanted to say. He couldn't quite say it.
Yeah, exactly. And at the moment, that's concluded with I don't know. It seemed like the left, the Democratic Party, didn't really get anything out of it. Apparently, they haven't built much out of that questioning. We're yet to see what kind of fallout that's going to come from it. But apparently, there just wasn't really much coming out of it. They essentially, Trump got off a little bit lightly there.
Yep.
Because there was no direct evidence presented or anything like that. I think the people on the Democratic Party and those Hillary supporters were expecting or hoping for some groundbreaking news.
I wasn't expecting anything, to be honest.
That's why people were tuning in, though, obviously.
I mean, the most you got out of it was James insinuated that Trump wasn't necessarily a man, well, was a man of dubious ethics. That's about it.
So while all this was going on in the US, over in the UK, we had a spectacular election.
A general election, yes, we did.
A general election. And what some have described as the most spectacularly uneventful win, spectacularly underwhelming win of any UK election.
Yes,
in recent history.
So it was really a battle between the Conservatives and current Prime Minister Theresa May and the Labor Party's Jeremy Corbyn.
Yeah. So Theresa May called the election early. They weren't meant to go to the polls until 2020.
No.
It's kind of weird after doing our election coverage of the US election for a year and a half, and then suddenly to have a snap election called in the UK, and you've only got, I think they ran for like 5 weeks. I think it was 6 weeks maybe.
Yeah, well, she was trying to capitalise on the relatively strong support for Brexit.
She was 25 points ahead.
Yeah, and obviously the very underwhelming performance during the Brexit campaign by Labor and pretty much the internal mutiny that was going on between the party and Jeremy Corbyn.
So the Conservatives were looking to build on their 12-seat majority, outright majority that they had.
Yeah. On their own, so they were a majority party, a majority government.
And build on that so that she had nominally what she was saying to have a stronger hand when she was going into the Brexit negotiations. And given that Labor's popularity or ratings were in the toilet at that stage, they had a 24 or 25 point lead. And she was just, everyone was expecting to romp it in. Every news organisation I listened to The Guardian, which is a left-leaning, and they'd written Corbyn off.
Yeah.
The Guardian is oddly negative on Corbyn for most. There's Owen Jones, who's very positive Corbyn, but nearly every other journalist there, for some reason, doesn't like Corbyn. I don't know why. And then the results came in, and it was like the Conservatives lost a huge amount of ground.
In the end, they lost 13 seats.
Lost 13 seats and Labor have gained 30.
Yes.
The Scottish National Party lost significantly, so everyone expected them to drop off a bit anyway. They had a bit of a high water mark, but they're still well ahead of the number of seats they had from before the previous election. So they're still doing quite well, but they lost 21 seats. The Liberal Dems actually built on their the number of seats they held, which was a little bit odd because I thought they'd probably lose a bit more, but they added 4 seats to a total of 12. The UKIP, the United Kingdom Independence Party, the alt-right of the UK, were just wiped out. Pretty much completely wiped out.
Well, I mean, wiped out, yes. They lost a lot of votes. They lost their only seat.
Yeah.
And it was a convincing loss. The Labor and Tories romped the votes in. This was the leader, Paul Nuttall.
Yes. So he's resigned now.
Oh, did he?
Yes, he's resigned. Nigel Farage is actually saying he may have to come back. He may
have to come back.
That's right.
To save the racists.
That's right. And now the the Conservatives have been forced into a combined government with the Democratic Unionist Party from Northern Ireland. Now, these are a fairly wacky bunch of hard right nationalist Irishmen.
Yeah, so these were, this is basically the strong British support in Northern Ireland.
Yeah, so essentially, I mean, everyone talks about the IRA being a terrorist organisation.
The Unionists were just as big.
Unionists had their own brand of that.
So
as well.
You can pay if you liken Sinn Féin to the IRA, you can link the Unionists
VUP
to the Parliament.
What did they call it? It was something
UDP.
But there was also the Red Hand Commando or something like that.
So they have strong links to the opposing parliamentary group.
Whereas Sinn Féin and the IRA tend to be a little more leftist, a little more liberal in their views. The DUP are anti-women's rights, anti-abortion, anti-LGBT rights, very homophobic. So they're a very religious organisation.
So they're a great partner for the Conservatives.
Yeah. So after everyone accusing Jeremy Corbyn of having some dubious kind of connections with terrorist organisations, it's Theresa May that's had to go into an alliance with essentially a watered-down terrorist organisation in order to get a government. And people are worried about what kind of concessions you're going to have to make to this kind of hard right party in order to keep the government.
Yep, to keep going. And obviously they're not going to get a lot of love from the remaining independents or minor parties that are out there. So Theresa went to the British people to ask for a mandate and didn't really get one.
So there's been talk that possibly another election coming up, because if this government fails, if this minority government can't get supply and they keep failing, then they'll have to go to another election.
Well, and it looks like they've lost the ability to the support to do a hard Brexit. I don't know what the difference between a hard Brexit and a soft Brexit is. But
like the DUP want a soft border between Northern and Southern Ireland, Northern Ireland and the Irish Republic.
Right.
So that kind of precludes a proper Brexit. If there's a soft border between Northern Ireland and Ireland, then they're not really separate. It's something the DUP are going to be demanding. That's definitely they want. So
strongly demanding that one.
And just going over the election. So May really she pretty much wanted to have the election, but not actually do the work of an election. So she was avoiding any kind of debates. She was being quite dismissive of the whole process, just thinking they were going to romp it in against Labor. And Corbyn went out there with a message for the many and not the few.
Yeah.
And he really ignited his base and got out a whole bunch of new voters.
Yeah.
The voting turnout was very good. It was up 2% from a high water mark of 1997, I think, or something like that. So, whereas Theresa May, I mean, they had a bit of a rough time in the UK with the terrorist attacks, obviously.
Yeah.
And Theresa May went in with some of her policies basically announcing she wanted to scrap some human rights.
Mm-hmm.
And of all weird things, bring back fox hunting. How on earth was this? Was she going? Why touch on fox hunting in an election like this? It was quite bizarre. But she's facing challenges within her own party now. Obviously,
yes.
A lot of people saying she may not be prime minister for very long. So,
although Boris is dismissing any rumours that he's vying for the seat.
Oh God, could you imagine having Boris and Trump leading two major Western democracies? That'd be crazy.
But yeah, you got to think the knives will be out for her eventually. I mean, I wish we had Dean here. He could probably comment a bit better as to how long he thinks she'll be in powerful.
Yeah.
Although, these sort of weak leaders seem to last a bit longer than we would think. Like
she could be around for a while. I mean, because Brexit's happening, whoever wants to be leader may wait till she's executed the Brexit before they do anything like that. No one wants to be tarred with that brush.
Nope.
They don't want to deal with that. I was kind of interested to see, given that Corbyn really, he did so much better than everyone expected. He closed a 25-point gap in the 6 weeks of the election. And over in the US, suddenly calls of Bernie would have won were screaming out again. Everyone's going, look at this. You run on that kind of platform and look at the success you can get.
Yeah.
So I was wondering what might happen with our own Labor Party. What lessons they might learn from this. It's early days yet, but Bill Shorten within hours was was tweeting out something to the effect of, and I think there was he sort of was quoted as saying, Turnbull would be well advised to heed Corbyn's slogan of "for the many, not the few." Well, Bill Shorten, Turnbull's the Tory in this scenario. You're the one that's meant to be heeding this message. It's I don't know, it's crazy. Anyway, he was getting roasted quite quickly by many people online. So they were obviously pointing out that there's two key differences. Corbyn in UK, Labor put forward a progressive agenda, something the ALP has really struggled to do. They don't seem to be terribly interested in many ways. And second, Corbyn's a charismatic and likable leader, and Shorten most certainly is not. He's I don't know, he's made out of cardboard and sticky tape, and it's just not really there.
Well, we have been going through a very bland period of Australian major party leaders.
That's right. Turnbull's not really much chopper.
God, no.
But it's so as yet you've got these sort of progressive movements building in the US. Clearly, one building in the UK with a. I mean, Corbyn's considerably further to the left than even Bernie Sanders was.
Yeah. And willing to campaign on those ideals.
Yeah, he was unapologetic about it, and he just went out, and that's he was not going to back down from it. And people like that, obviously. Yeah. People really do like that. Where's Australia's progressive leader going to come from? I know some progressive politicians, but they're not in any way near a position of leadership of a major party like that. I don't know. There was one Labor union leader, was it one of the union leaders or something? I can't remember her name now.
Plibersek? No.
No. Well, we talked about her in one of the episodes.
Yeah, we
before.
did. That's right. I can't remember her name.
We'll have to look at it. But there's no one in the actual political side that seems to be stepping up to that kind of...
The closest one we have, and I think it's going to take them a few years to sort of gain that sort of broader appeal, is Senator Scott Lidlam from Western Australia. Unfortunately, though...
He's in the Greens.
He's in the Greens, so he's always going to be held back by that to some extent.
Yeah. It's hard to see anyone rising up in the ALP to make that will make that kind of message. The ALP just seems far too
centrist.
It's neoliberal, and they're liberal light, basically. They're Liberal Party light, big L Liberal Party light. Yeah,
and probably, I don't know, maybe to a similar extent, like New Labour from the UK.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. More boring.
But then Corbyn came out, and he'd been there a long time, but he essentially came out of nowhere to become the leader. I think. So there's hope yet.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that's the UK election. It was pretty exciting for me. I remember going up to the election, everyone going, Corbyn's going to get wiped out, and then the exit polls started coming in, and one of the most amusing parts was seeing Theresa May, who won the election of her seat fairly easily, but seeing a picture of her with Lord Buckethead and an Elmo, sharing the stage with Elmo, a guy in an Elmo suit, Lord Buckethead and Lord something Hope of the huge monster raving loony party.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking that's fantastic that they're getting up there to do that kind of thing.
She did not seem impressed by having to be in that audience.
I think anything
perhaps she
that
doesn't like her constituents.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said about just showing how little dignity there is in the politics these days. And Lord Buckethead, it was funny because I was watching it live when she did her acceptance, and he was there, and I go, "What the hell's this guy in the black suit with the huge bucket, huge black bucket on his head?" And looked him up, and turns out he had a Twitter page, and looked at it, and there was about 800 followers. I think I checked it yesterday. There was something like 54,000 followers.
Wow!
He racked up a lot of followers in that time. He got a lot of media coverage.
Does he have a platform?
His platform is basically
bucket related.
Not Theresa May. He's an intergalactic space lord.
Okay.
But the interesting thing, Lord Buckethead has run against Margaret Thatcher, John Major, and Theresa May. No one knows if Lord Buckethead, the person under the bucket, is the same person that's run each time. It's a title that's obviously bestowed.
Right. Okay.
So it's obviously someone that's making a statement, and they've been keeping it up for a long time now.
So that's interesting, because I don't think in Australian federal elections you can go under a pseudonym. You have to go by your actual legal name. So unless these individuals are changing their name to Lord Buckethead by deed poll.
Well, yeah, obviously in Australia they might have to do that, but they don't have to do that in the UK, and it's quite amusing having the electoral official quite, properly announce their name as Buckethead Lord, 289 votes, and Elmo John. I think we should allow it. Oh, yeah, apparently the only thing in the UK is you got to pay a deposit, and if you don't get enough votes, you lose your deposit.
Yeah.
So I don't know how. I didn't even look up how much that deposit was, but
I dare say it's not too much.
I bet you they could crowdsource that amount of money.
Yeah, for Lord Buckethead. The only other bit of news I had, I think I had two bits, or only one. Now, going back to, for pretty much the past year, there's been rumours that Senator George Brandis, the Attorney General, would be imminently packing his bags to take on a new post as the High Commissioner for Britain.
It's not imminent enough if he's going.
Well, apparently that's not happening at the moment. The current incumbent...
doesn't want to go.
Alexander Downer has had his tenure extended to later in the year. So,
and why wouldn't you? Why would you give that sweet gig up?
Well, it may be to give Turnbull some breathing space to do a cabinet reshuffle, so a bit more time. George Brandis was on Sky News, and in commenting about those rumours about him having an imminent departure, he said that stories about his imminent departure are as old as Methuselah.
Oh wow, yeah.
Who the hell's Methuselah? And what a...
Do you not know who Methuselah is?
Yeah. No, I don't. It just sounds like a really wanky phrase.
Methuselah is a biblical reference.
Right. Okay.
Methuselah was supposedly the oldest man.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a very biblical reference.
He's not exactly a man of the people, is he? If he's referring to ancient biblical references,
you'd probably have to be relatively Christian to actually know that.
Sounds like it's very Old Testament.
Yeah. So he's not reaching everyone with that comment. No. I wish he'd go. They got to find some role for him. Surely they can give him something, God. Some sweet gig. Maybe it doesn't. I don't know. Even lure him in with something like New Caledonia.
I'd like to see him spending his time fighting off court cases for, I don't know, someone finds something he did dodgy in Parliament and take him to court over it, and I'd like to see him spend the next couple of years defending himself. And
trying to find lawyers to defend him, because apparently he's not well liked in that community.
No. I dare say that I remember reading about rumours that his former practice were quite happy to see him off into politics. Not a well loved, especially, and they didn't think he was particularly deserving of his silk that was bestowed upon him.
Oh wow! Speaking of lawyers, that was another thing that came up in the news. Trump apparently can't find a good lawyer. He's got his family lawyer, but some of these cases that are being brought up against him, particularly these constitutional ones and things like that, there's big firms that deal with that. It's fairly specialised law, and he can't find a big firm to take him on. And the comments seem to be that not only do they not think it's necessarily winnable, that's never really been an issue for legal firms, they're not sure he'll pay.
Yes. He has a bit of a reputation of not paying his subcontractors.
That's right. So these lawyers don't want to take it. I mean, I'm sure they'd be happy to take on, most of them would probably be happy to take on a big, long-term constitutional case that brings in millions and millions of dollars to a firm. But if Trump's history of not paying comes through, they're not interested.
So at the moment, he's having to rely on his personal lawyer.
That's right.
He's not necessarily well versed in constitutional law.
That's right. He's probably more like accident insurance.
Yeah. Like well, I mean, as Sam Cedar suggested, he's probably got a lot of experience from writing nasty letters to subcontractors over small claims, as opposed to very complex constitutional law.
Yeah. So anyway, that's good news.
I think that's all I had. Yep, that's all I got.
Much. Oh, just a quick note. Adam West died.
Yes, tragedy.
The original Batman.
Yes,
aged 88. That's a bit sad, but anyway.
Did you watch the original Batman 66 series?
Oh, I'm sure I saw it numerous times as a child. I haven't watched it much since. My most recent the most recent time I've noticed sort of Adam West is when he's been doing voiceovers for the Family Guy and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, his career pretty much tanked after Batman 66. He was typecast after that, and but he did get a bit of a resurgence through Family Guy.
Yeah, doing voiceovers. I think he did some for Adam West was in The Simpsons as well and stuff like that. So
He may well have
because he
been,
had such an iconic voice and mannerisms
Yeah.
and stuff like that,
Well, I
which
was
is why he
reading-
was typecast so easily as well.
Apparently, him and Seth MacFarlane have a very similar sense of humor, which is why he approached Adam West a while back, and then when Family Guy got kicked off again, he got him to become.
I remember Seth MacFarlane talking about it during an interview. And he says Adam West just got it. He got what he was after, and he just ran with it. Kind of.
Yeah, I don't think the Adam West characters to everyone's taste. I found it hilarious,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's.
Oh, well, no more Adam West. That's it. Game over.
On that note, I think we can call it a wrap. We're once again live again.
Yay. That's great stuff.
All right, thanks for listening. I've been Franco.
I've been Jason.